So much, Adit. Welcome again, Bharat, to this podcast. Really appreciate you taking time for this particularly. And I think we are going to have fun during this conversation, going to talk a lot about, the startup ecosystem, your transition and what it really takes, to build and to be where what you have done, right? So I'll just hand over the mic to you to, give a quick brief introduction about yourself, what you have been doing, and yeah, your journey so far.
Awesome. No, once again, thanks a lot, guys. Really, really sort of, happy to be here. I think you gave a much, much larger life introduction than, I think what is necessary, but thank you. And good to be here, Sukant. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Periscope. Periscope is a platform natively built on WhatsApp that helps organizations, do sales, customer success, and any other form of operations that they want. We help them automate a lot of their operations on WhatsApp, link it to their internal systems, manage their overall CRM, do a lot more. We'll talk more about the genesis of how this came about, but before Periscope, something we pivoted in about 6 months ago. Before that, we were building another startup called Hashmail, again in the communication space. We pivoted because we found that the market that we were solving for was not as large and it was not a big pain point. So the market essentially told us that, hey, you need to switch or die. So that's when effectively we moved. But before this, I was a consultant. I was working with Bain and Company for about 6 years. After my MBA, I predominantly used to work in SaaS, private equity, and
Yeah.
financial services. So I was involved in tech, but very much from never really sort of deep into the side of actually writing code. And always wanted to, and that transition was quite interesting. So, but yeah, that was my background. Before that, of course, was all the education that we've already covered. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Happy to
Great.
jump into any parts.
Yeah, great. Thanks for, letting us know about your journey. But what really intrigues me is how you have transitioned, right? So you did your BTech, then MBA, and then you were basically, you were at, I think you were into the consulting domain for a very long time. Then you started a company from business to tech, and now I think you are completely leading this tech currently at, Periscope. So
Yeah.
how did this transition, kind of happen for you? Was it more of a natural progression, or was it something that it was the ask need of the hour and then you just took it up?
I'd say a little bit of both. So here's what happened, right? So one, when I graduated from my undergrad, I used to sort of code. So it was not new territory for me in any sense. But in the intermediate period from about 2013 to 2021, you never really wrote production level code. And
Yeah,
what I've
yeah.
learned is that through my over the last 1.5 2 years is that that's phenomenally different. Right, being a hobby coder versus being sort of writing production level code is an entirely different ball game
that
altogether.
is that is true.
Yeah, and so are all the other things that come along with it, like building a team, setting up processes, and so on. But the way it actually went about is that I think when we decided that, hey, we're going to build something, we're obviously building a SaaS business. I think the most important thing over here is your product is literally your baby. That's what you're selling, right? And
Mhm.
I was deeply uncomfortable at not having very fine-grained control over what is it that we're actually delivering to people.
Mhm.
And I was also uncomfortable with when we hired our first set of sort of engineers. I frankly was finding it quite hard to one understand what is good versus what is great.
It was becoming a
Look at
black box for you, right?
yes, exactly. How much
That
effort
made
sort
you
of
uncomfortable.
absolutely, and it's very hard to challenge unless you sort of it
No,
yourself, right?
absolutely, totally agree, right? If you don't know, you really can't, do a deep dive.
Exactly, exactly, and it's very hard to even sometimes say, look. are we doing necessarily the right thing from a long-term sort of perspective? Like, are we set up for scale in this? Is there problems that in the way we've currently architected a system that that we haven't thought of and that might come up in the future? And the fact that I was leaving a lot of this thinking to others made me uncomfortable. And yeah, and that's really how the transition sort of went in. And once I sort of went down that road, I realized I actually like this a lot more than anything I've done previously in my
Maybe,
career.
maybe, you never know. This was something that you always wanted to do. This was your
Yeah,
calling, right? And
pretty much, pretty much. So the fact that I say it's a roundabout journey. My past careers have been enormously sort of valuable, just the most outstanding places I've worked at, and
yep.
just the best experiences I've taken away from them. But this is really what I like to do, sort of day in day out.
This,
And
yeah, end of the day, this is what gives you fulfillment. I think.
yeah, precisely. And this is what gives me energy and
Yeah.
I think that's really what happened. It's a little bit of both. I'm kind of glad we got into this space. I see a lot of people today struggling with, a lot of the very common complaints. Hey, I know I want to go start something up, but I'm not a technical person. I need a technical
Mhm.
co-founder, and my general answer to a lot of them is, what, just roll up your sleeves and just do it.
Do it
That'll
yourself.
just be the easier answer.
Get your hands dirty. At least if you don't get too deep into it, you should be understanding the nuances. I think that is very important, right? Even as a founder, even if you get a co-founder or someone, I don't know, because there is sometimes, I have seen this multiple times. There is that energy mismatch between the co-founders as well. Sometimes, you get frustrated with your co-founder as well, right? So it's important. And even in the at least in the early stages of a startup, I think all the co-founder needs to get their hands dirty in every place. It has to be a T-shaped thing, right? One thing where you are completely focused, but everywhere else you are at least informed. You are at least aware, what's going on. That is important in my opinion. But
Yeah. I also think that if you do know all of this, you can just make better informed, sort of, or provide better informed solutions. Or when you think of something, you can be a lot more mindful in terms of what it takes. I'll give you an example. We used to do a lot of this, work around, you know, let's say something like pricing, strategy for a bunch of folks, right? And then, even folks, a lot of times somebody might come up and say, hey, this is what our pricing should be. And here's why, because we've looked at competition and everyone else is offering this, and this is what our plan structure should be, and so on. But often what people miss is it'll be helpful if you also understand how you implement this plan. So you can ask the questions like, hey, what happens if someone upgrades in the middle of the month, or if you have to implement gating for different plans, what kind of how does it affect our overall sort of architecture? Do I need to put sort of price gates on every page? Do I need to
Yep.
put it to the feature level? So, I mean, I think the moment someone gets an understanding of those nuances, I think it makes for it just elevates the conversation for everyone else as well.
Yep, right. So, I have a very interesting question to ask. But before I do that, I'll ask this, s- from what I understand, Periscope is something, it's CRM built on top of WhatsApp, right? And this is something which I think that you can't really build until you have a first-hand experience of, the pain points.
Mm.
Personally, see, I won't be able to empathize with what an SME might be looking at until unless I don't have that first-hand experience. I don't understand, the problem. So it's a
Yeah.
very interesting problem statement that you have picked for yourself. And I
Mm.
think at the same point of time, quite challenging as well, given the kind of background, kind of work that you have been doing. So
Yeah.
what was the motivation? What led to Periscope? What led to the birth of Periscope?
Well, actually, the what you said initially as well. So before, so when we decided to pivot from our previous product, I think one of the big mistakes we made in the last one was we didn't let the market tell us what they want.
Hmm.
In a sense, we kind of imagined that, hey, this is going to be this is a need, and to be fair, it was, but it was largely us sort of kind of pushing essentially what the product would be. We were building essentially an intercom like equivalent for the crypto Web3 market, and the market was small. The solution that we had was a vitamin. What is not a painkiller. It didn't solve a
Saturated
real
market,
immediate
right?
now and there problem. And I think when we decided that we want to pivot, I think one of the first things we did was, let's not imagine that this is what is going to be the needs. We just went out and spoke to people. And we spoke to, I think, we leveraged our network and even beyond. And I think when we decided to pivot in August of last year, we spoke to, I think, more than 100 people. And we've since then done, I think, over 500 conversations, including with our current customers, but also sort of, other potential customers. And frankly, they are the ones who told us. They came and told us that, look, we use WhatsApp for everything in our business. Literally, words are हमारा पूरा धंधा WhatsApp पे चलता है. Which means your किसी का, there's a guy who's sort of, who's managing a bunch of a tech sort of company, managing a bunch of schools that is there. हर school के साथ एक WhatsApp group है जिसमें there is a, the
Yes.
school has some problem, this is what you do. One other person has 20 field force sort of, agents. Every agent has a WhatsApp number, which sort of, they're using to talk to a bunch of clients. This guy centrally has no visibility into a bunch of them. Someone is taking orders essentially from WhatsApp, but this is not a customer, placing an order kind of thing. Isme flow hota hai. This is people like logistics players, like a trucker sort of, comes in, says that, hey, I have availability and capacity. And there are guys sitting who are manually, taking this information from WhatsApp, putting it in some kind of an Excel or in an internal system and so on. So, and everyone had this problem. Everything runs on WhatsApp. WhatsApp completely is disconnected from everything internally. Too hard to sort of, to make anything work. And that was really the problem they said we want you to solve.
Basically, you guys went out and discovered the various, the pain points.
Yeah.
Or is there a particular domain that you were looking at? This is what's happening in this particular domain or this particular vertical, and then you spoke to those customers. Or you guys are open for, just exploring the problem statement?
I think we had some guardrails. Number one, we said, look, we know how to build software. So I think it had to be sort of, something that has to be a software solution. I don't think, we are, and this is just something, for example, it is not in my sort of, skill set probably to run a very ops heavy business or a D2C brand or something. So someone comes and says that, hey, I need a better sort of, like skincare sort of product, and I'm like, okay, I'm sure that's a problem, but it's not something that I can solve. So I think software was a big guardrail for us. But outside of that, honestly, nothing else. We didn't pick a vertical. We didn't pick sort of something we want to. Honestly, Gen AI was hot, so we initially also flirted around a little bit with some things there, but then the at the end of the day, our clear thing was it has to be a problem that a customer is willing to pay 10 and then. So one of the key things was, look, we asked customers, we will build this for you. Are you willing to pay us now for something we'll give you 1 month down the line? And when we had 20 people say yes, that's when we said, okay, let's go down this route.
That's nice. That's quite interesting. Because see what happens, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do, because you just keep, thinking of different ideas, and it's typically just starts in your head and ends in your head. It never sees the daylight, right? And you just imagine, like you said, like everything is built on top of assumption. Most of the products, I think, like most of the startups are just assumptions, and without doing proper homework. And I think that's where things fail. So I think this is something I would even personally relate to. Understanding something, like understanding the problem statement where the end user will probably end up paying, and they will only pay if you're actually solving a problem for them. And when you say solving a problem, it should either help them make money or it should either help them save time, right? If it is not doing any of these, then don't do, then don't build the business, right? So yeah.
And in our opinion, we don't, in our opinion, generally sort of, if you can help somebody make money, that's the best thing you can do.
And
but if you can help them make money,
a lot of time as well, right? There's a lot of discovery that can happen.
Yeah.
If you have 100 conversation happening over WhatsApp, it's very highly likely, that you will end up missing 10% of those conversations.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, that
So in
discussion.
fact, one of the key asks, when I say, right, customers come back and tell you what you want to build, we get our best product roadmap from customers itself.
Yeah,
So customers, we are launching one, and so customers, for example, say this exact same thing. I end up missing conversations, and within the groups as well, I end up missing sort of important messages. So now we have an AI layer that basically flags conversations or other messages as tickets in case that the message is something that is a query or is an important task or is an important person within that group who sort of flagged it. It
yeah.
automatically raises that as a like a task or a to do for you to sort of close out, or somebody in your team to close out. And this was not something that we imagined, by the way. This is something that somebody came up and said, look, it would be amazing that I have this problem. It would be amazing if you could solve it. And we said, look, this is how it's going to look as a solution. They said, all this is great, but can I somehow link it to my internal system as well? I said, fantastic, we can do that as well. We don't have to imagine the product if
Correct, right?
the
So
problem is
you
real.
already have that outlined, for
Yeah,
you, by your customers. I
yeah.
think can't be a better way of, defining the overall product scope or whatever you want to call that, right? Yeah. So one thing, that most of the folks typically end up contemplating, they really don't understand, because there are a lot of times when a lot of founders, a lot of engineering leaders end up over engineering stuff,
Yeah.
right? So you know that your scale is probably going to be, 1,000 DAU or maybe a 10,000 DAU, but you are so obsessed with building a distributed system, a horizontal system at a scale that you started building for a million DAU, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that you're able to achieve that. You're not able to achieve this, or you're not able to achieve that. You are somewhere in between, right? Dangling somewhere in between. So what are your thoughts around, balancing the speed versus the quality or the overall, longer picture?
I think the interesting thing is, um, we've had to always learn on the fly with new systems in terms of
Yeah.
scale that is there. So one of the things is I don't have this problem that's saying that, hey, I want to solve something for a million users. I'll give you an example. When we were designing of our architecture right now, I obviously get advice from a bunch of people. A lot of people told me that, hey, you should set up a Kubernetes cluster so that you can manage and sort of scale up and scale your workload as much as you want. And I'm like, no, screw it. I'm gonna have one or two monolithic backends with a load balancer that kind of just handles the entire traffic. And you know
Right.
what? It's completely fine. It is easy to manage. I don't have to bother
Uh,
with something like
Easy
a
to
control
manage.
plane
It's
handle this.
cheap,
Sorry?
not cheap.
Yeah,
It's
it's much cheaper, much
cheap,
cheaper.
2x, 3x, cheaper than if you go to Kubernetes. And you're just making the entire thing complicated. You
Yeah,
just don't need it right now, man. So
absolutely. And I think thing is, my answer to a lot of this is this something that tomorrow, if do I need to hire specialized sort of folks to actually manage this? And tomorrow, if for some reason, if nobody else is there, can I handle this myself? And um, I think unless push comes to shove, we really don't do that. We assume that things will get refactored all the time, and I think that is a key part of it. Like
right, right.
every couple of orders of magnitude that you change, we assume that things are going to sort of change. I think
Mhm.
our approach has worked well for us so far. We always prefer speed. So I think two things we've learned from last time was one, launch early, charge money first and upfront. Launch
Okay.
early will tell you whether this works or not, and customers will tell you exactly saying what is important, what is not. Charging
Right.
money will basically allow you to say, look, is this valuable enough that somebody is going to pay for it? If they're not willing to pay for it, it's not valuable enough. So I think these two things we've
Right.
kind of
And you're telling
ingrained
yourself
in
the
our
stories, that I'll add this feature, that feature, that feature, then it will eventually ramp up. That is again, I think these are just stories. Helps
yeah.
you sleep at night, but doesn't work. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. So basically, and also have you seen from first hand, have you seen this, that you build or you compromise little bit on a certain aspect on quality, right? And it impacted you. There was, some mishap that happening, and your entire software went, there was a downtime of few couple of hours, something like that happened. When
Yeah.
you took a conscious decision, that all right, I'll just because end of the day, like it's again about balancing, right? You have to understand what like what to look at and what to prioritize, right? So is there something that you guys have faced?
Downtime happens, and I think it'll happen for everyone. And I'm saying
Mhm.
that part of this goal is to if I look at it this way, if you have a 100% perfect system that essentially went out, we probably launched too late.
Yeah.
Uh, for example, when we launched, I don't think so. We had bare bones monitoring. I think our error reporting was basically Slack with some
Mhm.
sort of standard sort of log files that were essentially captured.
Be
Uh,
fast and quick.
I think one bad thing is I think our test coverage should be higher, and now I'm pushing a lot more for it. But essentially things have broken. And I think that's fine. In fact,
Mhm.
one of the best things is our customers have come back and told us, "Hey, this looks broken," and we've gone ahead and we fixed it. And I think that kind of
Mhm.
our customers understand that. Look, obviously, as things get more stable, the expectations change. But I think at
Right.
this point in time, when you're early in, I think it's an understandable thing that some things won't work. And I think our customers have been thankfully nice enough to sort of let us know. The good part is that we are completely reachable because we use our own product and WhatsApp to manage everything. We are on a WhatsApp group with every single customer of ours. So any issue gets straight up, pinged here, which goes to our team, which gets resolved, and which gets communicated back on WhatsApp itself. So I think those guys are happy, and I think it kind of becomes valuable for us. I don't think you'll ever be able to stress test your system if it's a closed system with yourself, unless you put it in the hands of
Right.
customers. I
Correct,
don't
correct.
think you would have
Then you
ever
won't
got
be
the
able
edge
to test
cases.
it. The best test is, when it goes out to the end user. That's when you get the real test of what's going right, what's going wrong, and
Yeah,
needs to be fixed.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so, you mentioned around, like you mentioned about that how the focusing more around, basically your customers are pretty much aligned with you. And that is something, I think that is kind of, surprise for me as well. Because typically when people pay for it, uh, they have that, entitled behavior, I'm paying for it and it has to work perfectly fine. How do you communicate that? I think that is an art, man. So how are you guys doing that? So how come you're paying customers, happy with few things going down and still they are continuing? Everybody would want to learn about this art.
Look, I think it comes down to the fact that um, I think you're solving something. The alternative is basically maybe doing something a lot more manually or just it doesn't exist. So you're solving something valuable. So there's a net positive that is there. That is how yes, some things are going to sort of go off or may not. Or put it another way, something may be required by them that's not as part of the current roadmap, or even if it is, it's going to take us some time to essentially launch that particular thing. And some are not. I think what helps at the end of the day is I don't think people like necessarily talking to, like, if you make someone when they have an issue raise a ticket, and then you get some automated bot response that comes and says,
Yeah,
we get
yeah.
back to you in 24 to 48 hours. I think people don't like that. I think
Mhm.
if
That's
you
very
are on a
mechanical.
WhatsApp group with sort of with your customers all the time and they raise an issue, and me and my co-founder and generally our engineering team and different people are different groups. We're on groups with all the customers. So when they raise an issue, one of us always is responsible saying that, look, sorry about this, we understand, we'll get back to you and check. And we do. And I think so when you have that human level relationship, I think it makes a difference. I don't know how long this can scale. I don't know
Mhm.
till how many customer mark can we personally be on all the WhatsApp groups.
But I
But
think by that time you'll be pretty stable, right? So by that time you reach that, you achieve that critical mass, you'll be pretty stable.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think it's still a very valuable thing to do. I think
mm,
if we can manage our WhatsApp sort of, for ourselves better, I think we would like to continue to be as part of the groups. It is invaluable because they just give you the best feedback ever.
yeah, agreed, agreed. No, makes a lot of sense. And how do you, uh, reaching out to these SME users is also again a lot of pain. People are doing a lot of performance marketing, influencer marketing, etc., right? To get the eyeballs of these customers. So how does it work for you guys? Like what is your, uh, in SaaS, primarily in SaaS, I think that magic number that people look at is $1 million of ARR, correct? And that's where you think that you have got a right product adoption and a decent PMF for you to scale and raise good money and like go all in into that. So what has been your approach and what are your 2 cents for people who are building SaaS product, how to get their first initial user base? Because these
I,
guys become your evangelist eventually.
yeah. So I think I don't know the answer to the first one. So we are still also figuring out our own GTM channels. What has worked well for us so far, by the way, is um, so referrals have worked really well.
Mhm.
So our customers, word of mouth has worked well, but it's not a scalable. I think initially, at least, in a sense, we've got some people who our customers have tried to talk about it, talked about it to others, and others are like, "Oh, I have the same problem," so they've reached out like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Content has worked surprisingly well. My CEO is fairly active on LinkedIn. She's got a pretty solid
Achha,
presence. I
okay.
think that ends up driving some degree of inbounds who and WhatsApp is so ubiquitous, pretty much everybody has this problem. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that a niche that you're building in that very selective sort of folks have it. This is pretty much everyone who has it. So that ends up being a decent channel. And LinkedIn honestly has worked well as from an we've experimented with some ads there. We've got some inbounds
Okay.
from that, but very frankly, we don't have a GTM process that scales. We don't do outbound yet.
Don't have a playbook yet, that works.
Yeah,
I
it's. I
know.
think I don't know. I think India, my email nobody checks. Especially look at SME mid market and all. It's just too spammy. I don't think it really works.
Right. Yeah, even LinkedIn, when you say LinkedIn, that is also kind of a shocker for me. SMEs, are they really that active on LinkedIn?
We've
And
had a decent conversion rate on
that's
LinkedIn.
nice. That
I
is
think still, I think our CAC is still high, but I
Mhm.
think we've got a good set of funnel, from LinkedIn. And by the way, our customer base is global. Global in the sense, I think we have
Okay.
customers from LATAM, from Africa, from
That's
Eastern
nice.
Europe, from Southeast Asia. We don't
So
have it from Western Europe and US क्योंकि वहाँ पे WhatsApp नहीं चलता, but we have clients from all over. And so far, this has worked.
multiple languages and multiple currencies.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, we charge in USD, but
that's fine.
but the language thing is both. I mean, the internationalization is supported directly by browsers, so we don't have to actually do anything special or separate for that.
Mhm.
But LinkedIn has worked well from those sort of channels for us.
Yeah, yeah.
But we haven't figured it out, honestly. But the initial set of customers, by the way, I think that should just be you just going out, talking to as many people as you want, as you can, sorry, and finding out, sort of, like I said, 10 people who have this problem deep enough that they're willing to pay.
You're right. I think you have to work very closely with these guys as well, right? Getting their feedback, then working with them, to fill those gaps. But
Mm.
it's very exciting, like I feel I get very excited to see how we are building, so many really nice SaaS companies are coming out of India now. That too, until few years back, we were just the backend capital of the world, right? Backend capital, right? And now there have been so many. We have Zoho, we have Fresh Teams. Plus, I know few folks, like there is a company called Middleware, so run by these guys group. So these are an observability platform
Yeah.
for developers. So basically, it lets you look at how your overall team is performing.
Yeah.
We are also, by the way, we are also building a SaaS around, a hiring platform called 10x, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so what we are trying to do is, what typically happens, you have Naukri of the world, you have InstaHire of the world, right? But these are again just databases, right? They
Mm.
help you with the discovery thing, but there is nothing that exists that helps bring in more predictability in the entire hiring process and more speed in the entire hiring process. That is something which nobody is doing. Everybody is just giving you access to the candidates. And if you
Yeah.
look at how competitive the world is getting, right? At least for the more skilled jobs like developers, product managers, designers, etc. Right? So that is something that we are trying to solve. Let's see how that goes. But yeah,
Sounds amazing. All the very best.
thank you so
But yeah,
much.
no, definitely, I've seen hiring go wrong.
Yeah.
I think that would be a definite sort of, key part, especially as you get to the maybe 20, 30, 40 member mark, you need something in a more robust system. All the best.
Right. How, by the way, while we are talking about hiring, so what are your 2 cents around building the initial core team?
Hmm. I struggled through this. Um, I think it varies quite a lot. I think the first and foremost thing is, is you need to get your co-founders sort of, correct.
Hmm.
Um, I have a very strong opinion against any form of co-founder matching. I'm sure it works, but I don't believe you can just start a company with someone you just met on a dating
Not
website.
possible. Not
So
possible.
it's a bit in analogy, it's a bit like an arranged marriage, but without the social and familial construct to actually keep you
I
together.
don't think that ever works. Luck is the only thing, that can make it work. Otherwise, there is so much stress. There are so many highs and lows, right? And if you
Yeah,
don't get along together, if you're not complementing, and what people end up doing, is just look at the complementing skills, right? So I look at tech, you look at sales, but
right.
that doesn't work that way, right? So you have to, and then you start ending up, with a lot of resentments that,
Yeah.
I have been doing all the heavy lifting. This guy doesn't do anything, right? So and then
Yeah.
yeah,
So there, I think one of the biggest, if PMF, not finding PMF is one of the biggest reasons why companies die, the other big reason is essentially co-founder conflicts. And you will have conflicts with your co-founder. You will have big, massive fights with your
and if that is
co-founder.
not happening, then one of
Ah,
them, that person is, or both of them are
checked
not
out.
able
Go checked out also. If you're not fighting, then you're probably checked out. Like it's a passionate game. You will
correct.
expect that this other person also brings in the passion. When two people bring the same level of passion, you will fight, and you should know how to fight with your co-founder, or rather, how to resolve fights. If you don't know how
Right.
to resolve fights, then I don't think that I don't think the relationship is mature enough to get into something like you're playing a 10-20 year game, and it's
Correct.
it's almost like a marriage. So I think it's important that that dynamic is right. I think that's one of the first and foremost things that needs to be sort of sorted in terms of your initial core team. um I think you have to accept that. So you're yeah, especially early on, you may not, unless you're sort of a repeat founder.
Mhm.
um when you've done something really successful in the past, and you're coming in with huge amounts of capital, and you just have an army of talent that is there. You will
Right.
have to go out and do a lot more of outreach. So in our initial days, we went out and we reached out to a ton of people. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them just wouldn't want to go with someone who's just a new startup essentially. But you will have to do a lot of outreach initially. I think that's an important one that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people think that it's just okay ki, acha, I just get some recruiter and kind of let them handle it, or people just apply straight up that is there. But you have to put a lot of effort. You'll have to write to a lot of people. You will have to score your talent, network, to kind of find this. You'll often find that you may not be able to match compensation, etc. So you have to sell a story to a lot of people as to why they should leave something that they're currently doing and join a very small, unknown, fledgling company that will
Right.
not survive. for and I think that's not a very fun job, but it is an important one.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think apart from that, I think that's the most important thing. Baki, so it's just a fairly straightforward part.
Right. I think team is actually, when people say that team is most important, it actually is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think almost everyone I know is struggling with the right set of team. Nobody is super, I would say, satisfied with how, and it's not talking about co-founders, because you need to have the army of those people, right? Your core team, right? Core team in engineering, in product, in sales, in marketing, and everything. And that those guys need to be equally passionate about what you are doing.
I think you have diamonds in the rough, and I think the better approach is to say, look, how can I cultivate people,
Mhm.
rather than sort of hire for that particular thing. And I don't mean sort of just. I mean cultivate in the sense there are a lot of amazing talent out there, young amazing talent. It has nothing to do. There is zero correlation with college or pedigree or past experience or whatever it is. There are
Just
just
a filter, it's just a filter because it's
yeah.
such a huge circle, you need to make it small, right? And then these filters just help you to refine what you are looking for. Other than
Yeah,
that,
but we kind of stopped doing that refining. I mean, in the sense that from our perspective, we just like I don't think so. I have a few hiring rules, for example. One, I generally don't look at I don't look at sort of college. I don't look at, especially for engineering, I don't look at things like lead code, etc. I have zero iota of interest in that. I think a good thing is, look, are you a tinkerer? Do you do something in your spare time?
mm,
That you have projects of your own when
are
you're
you
talking about
passionate, I
code.
think, right?
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you sound excited, or do you just do this because it's a job? So are you
Exactly.
excited about code? And I think we have in our team, one of our earliest engineers, absolute gem of a person. Um, the guy's a star because he genuinely is deeply passionate about sort of what he builds and what he writes. So this is the kind of guy who, if there's a bug that is there, it's gonna and it he's gonna spend 10 hours in front of the screen, obviously with doing whatever, but getting that sort of right, and not someone who's gonna give up after 30 minutes and say, look,
Correct.
it's in your and somebody else handles it. I think that it's an attitude more than anything else. I think if you can find that attitude, you'll hire, right?
I think what I typically, the way I frame it is, if you can't attach your ego to what you are building,
Yeah,
then you're not the right fit, right? You
yeah,
should have something like this. यार ये मैंने बनाया है. How come something like this has happened?
yeah,
And you get basically, you get so involved, you get so egoistic about it,
yeah.
and then that's when that magic happens. Then there are people, कि यार बनाया है, issues तो आएंगे ही, कुछ नहीं कर सकते हम, right? And that is the चलता है वाला attitude that typically doesn't work in the very early stage, in a very early stage, in the core team primarily. There will be those kind of people. You can't hire everyone, with that mindset, but not in the very early stages.
Yeah, I think you'll have both types. You cannot be perfect in terms of your hiring. You'll have both types. But I think if you find those gems, I think sort of it's important that you nurture and sort of grow that. And
Right.
you kind of I think everyone make mistakes hiring. Like we've also done so our interview processes have evolved. The kind of markers and signals we looked for evolved. I think all of that sort of changes because you will make those mistakes and you learn from that and you'll continue and you grow. I think that's going to be a key part of this overall
Mhm.
journey that a lot of people undertake. You're just going to make a ton of mistakes, hiring being one of them.
Right, right. What do you think about the current market landscape? How do you think this is going to shape up the startup ecosystem for good or for bad? What are your thoughts on that? Is this something like uh, is the current market landscape is helping us correct things, or overall course, is this good for course correction, or is this something that taking the entire industry in the negative direction?
I think net we're in for a pretty awesome half a decade. I think it's all upside from here.
Mm.
Um, there will always be some things that sort of go well. There'll always be some things that sort of don't. I, for example, and I'm not talking about the broader one, not just from a tech and VC. I'll come to that, but from a broader perspective, I think the top layer of India is going to continue to get richer. So anyone building for that, I think that is going to sort of go really well for them. So if you're building for tier one, tier two India, that part of it, the upper tier of tier two India, I think you're going to be fine. I think tier three India is still going to take some time to catch up. I think
Right.
that's a little bit of an overblown thing that happened over the 5 years. So I think that's going to take some more time to essentially come up to fruition. But if you talk specifically with respect to sort of the what we call as the venture class of sort of startups, I think the last year or so has not been great. It's been not great for a very clear reason. There hasn't been a so by the way, pre-seed and seed funding has still been fine.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
problem essentially has come in at the fact that a lot of Series A is not happening.
A plus is getting, more or less. Seed
So,
is
so
still happening. It's taking longer. The timeline is elongated a little bit, but that is fine. That is still
yeah,
happening.
there's a reason it's still gone down. And the thing is that the at least in India, there are not a lot of takers for the C, D, and E, right? You don't have a lot of people necessarily. So the only people who used to do these kind of investments were well, SoftBank and you had Tiger and Alpha Wave and all that.
Right, right. And none of these are big. So basically, see, all this is US money. It's either flowing out of US or Singapore or Middle East, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's that without the lack of that, that's why we've seen a little bit of correction on this. But I think honestly, it's going to be good because we're going to see a lot of people building companies in India. I think India can be fairly, very highly or much more capital efficient in building all these companies than we are today. I think our cost base generally for any startups want to build over here is significantly lower than if you build anywhere in the developed world.
that is true.
Consequently,
Yeah.
you must need lesser amount of capital. But if you're
Correct.
deploying the same amount of capital, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see a lot of companies essentially come into a point where they're going to not need a lot of external capital to continue to
Mhm.
sort of grow. And I think they're going to be okay with it because one
I
of the
think
things that's
that
going to happen is
mindset shift is happening, which I think is quite good.
yeah,
That people are building to last, not just, not just gimmicky, raise money and then go
ah,
for another round, then go for another round. So
correct. I think
yeah,
the other benefit is that I think we want to see a lot of founders with a lot more ownership within their companies.
yeah,
So generally, this trend is that by the time a company goes to D or so, you have a founder that's typically in single digit or low double digit sort of
right, right.
ownership. I think you're going to see that change. I think you're going to have a lot of companies who've raised Series A, and this after that never really needing more capital after that. So,
Mhm.
um, which is a good thing. Number of companies being started, I think, is a little lower. Anecdotally speaking, I think a year and a half ago, we had a lot more people start up. I think lesser, folks have coming out now and are, starting companies up. I think it's partially also due to the market. It was a very hot market then. Even
Right,
if you started up and things didn't work out, you could always go back and there'd be a bunch of roles waiting for you. I think
correct.
people are more cautious now. I think that should change. Hopefully, that will change. Um, that'll be a
So
good.
that will change. That is obviously going to change. And what I see, like once the next bull run is going to be much more aggressive than what we saw earlier, after COVID,
Yeah.
etc. So yeah, I think end of the day, uh, it's a sine graph, right? So things end up moving in that direction.
Hmm.
What is your like overall principle? What is that one? I would say a one-liner that you live by as a founder. What is that you always go back and look at? Like this is my North Star. Uh, and not from the company perspective, from the individual perspective, that what as an individual is a North Star. That's the blueprint, that I'll always.
I think it'll have to be, this is the same thing we have kind of have it plastered on a wall is you know, just talk to your customers. You need nothing else. I think तुम्हारा टीम बन जाएगा, तुम्हारा फंडिंग हो जाएगा, तुम्हारा sort of product भी बन जाएगा. You don't have to dream up a roadmap. You don't do anything. Just simply talk to your customers. The
Yeah.
number of people who I've seen who refuse to talk to customers is just massive.
Yeah.
There's a healthy dose of fear, by the way, in this. People are afraid sometimes to talk to customers simply because तुम्हारे customers तुम्हें unfiltered बोल देंगे कि ये useless है.
Right. And people don't want, there is a lot of bias with what you think is right. Or you don't want to even, think that what I am assuming is not right. Right. So
Your investors and your sort of your friends and your family, will tell you something. It's easy to go and tell them, inko kya pata? They don't know, they haven't seen this, we know it's valuable. But you cannot ignore that value, the thing from your customer, because that's the guy who's going to buy. And that person has no incentive to lie to you. Everybody else has an incentive to lie to you. They'll say, oh, it's a very nice product, congratulations, what you built is pretty awesome. Oh, I'll definitely buy this. I can see this to have a lot of value. But now the customer, they have zero incentive.
Nothing matters.
They will tell you the true unfiltered truth. And the best way to get to
that is fine, it just helps you feel good, but it doesn't make your business feel good if you don't go back and talk to your customers. So true. Right. I think, after this conversation, I think there have been certain aspects where we have been doing certain assumptions, for 10x that we are building. I think we are just going back and talk to some of our potential customers and user base. It's kind of an eye opener for me as well. So
that one has been an interesting one.
Take it from myself as well, so we don't get distracted. Right. But doesn't this happen, although you live by this statement, but doesn't this happen? Sometimes you just want to go with your instincts, like this is what my gut feeling is, and I should go ahead and do it, even if the customer is saying against that. A lot of people say, right, even your customer doesn't know what they want.
Yeah.
So do you think does that happen with you guys?
So I think you shouldn't listen to your customers for the solution. I think you should listen to a customer for the problem. So that's the big difference. I think if you go and ask the customer ki, kya banana hai, they will tell you all kinds of stuff. Some of this will be good, some of them might be utter crap. I think the important thing is you don't go and ask them what is it that you want to build. You ask them, why do you want me to build this?
Right.
You will understand the problem that someone is facing. Just as a thing, I'll give you an example. Our customer came and said, I am missing a lot of messages that are coming in from a lot of our clients that is there. And we made this mistake. We asked them, what do you want for this? They were like, look, can you build a system such that every time something happens on WhatsApp, this kind of goes to one other group and notifies that, hey, this customer has posted this. So we are in another WhatsApp group, so somebody else can pick up from there and come back here and be able to respond. That solution was a bad solution to the problem that they had said, which is I'm missing messages. The right solution is something else. What that right solution is for you to discover. That is your problem. You need to sort of figure out what is it that I can do that will work. And by the way, you can get this part wrong as well. You may have to take 3 or 4 iterations on this feature maybe to solve that problem, but that's your thing to solve. But let them tell you, na, ki, acha, mere ko miss ho raha hai, this is what I want to solve. And I don't want to solve sort of, some fancy AI layer on top of it that kind of gives me a summary of my group. Nahi chahiye wo. So I think that's the difference.
Everything boils down to how frequently you're talking to your customers, right? And how much feedback you are getting on top of that, right? And just measuring everything.
One qualification I would say, paying customers. I think
Yeah.
It is a difference between free feedback and or customers
Right.
and paid feedback. I think the truest form of feedback comes from paid feedback. Paid feedback in the sense feedback from paying customers. I think there is a massive, massive difference in that because the free
Right.
customer, you generally don't know whether this is somebody that's actually valuing your product or not. But if someone's put their credit card in or is sort of paying you on a monthly or a yearly basis, then you know that okay,
They have seen that value, right? And then
it
that's
is
that.
important enough for this person that this gets solved, that they're
Yeah.
willing to pay for it.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Makes a lot of sense. And I think, just as a ending question or more of a discussion, right? So what are your thoughts around, you know, keeping the overall, given, that the overall, if for your fellow founders, fellow entrepreneurs primarily, right? How do you keep your team overall pumped up? There has been a huge churn, right? So typically, if you look at engineers primarily, right, there is a lot of typically don't um, stay for more than a year. And one mistake, uh, I look at it as a mistake, I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs doing is, that when they talk to a candidate, they are hell bent on, that the candidate should be very passionate about the problem they are solving.
Hmm.
So, do you think is this the right way to look at, or they should try to get the person with the right attitude, and over time build, uh, help build that passion in that within that candidate or within that employee?
Yeah, I think that nobody's going to be as passionate as a problem as you. वो
Hmm.
पहली बार देख रहे हैं इस problem को, very likely. And let me put it another way. Sometimes it's just hard to be sort of you're building software, and it could be of any kinds. Sometimes it's just hard. People have other sort of priorities in life. You may not be as passionate about sort of solving for some you know some small and medium enterprise जिसको अपने धंधे में कुछ तो automation करना है. It just may not be
Yeah.
interesting, but at the same time I think it's important to look for a guy who's passionate about just building sort of tech. I think if you're looking for an engineer or someone who will go that extra mile with respect to that attention to detail, someone who if you give a problem is not going to give up in 30 minutes and say, okay, you know what, I'm done, mere se nahi ho payega, but someone who's actually going to put a lot of fight into it. Because I
Right.
think that they will put that fight irrespective of what the problem is. So
Hmm.
tomorrow you may have
Yeah.
you may want them to do something that is completely unrelated to sort of the
Might
problem you're
pivot,
solving.
right? You might pivot. So you
You
might
might
you might be
pivot.
doing something else.
You might
So
pivot. Like if I tell this guy कि यार देखो अभी we have sort of 10 servers that is there. उसमें ना we need to put a very robust monitoring in place. We need a very very high level of internal dashboards, logging, alarms, alerting, all of that. This has nothing to do with the problem.
yeah.
That the same job can be applied to nearly every start SaaS company or generally a lot of companies because this is a base level infrastructure you need to solve. The guy has to be passionate about this. The guy or girl has to be passionate about this. And this is something that I think you need to look for that. You need to look for a guy who's interested in what you're doing,
Mhm.
who's interested in sort of, in the domain that you're operating in, but not more than
Right.
that. I think
I think mostly,
the
someone
attitude is
who's
generally
passionate
passionate will be
about
fine.
solving challenging problem, right? And doesn't matter what that problem is about, but as long as you are passionate about, you are taking it as a challenge and uh, taking it, head on. I think that's what we should be looking at,
Pretty much.
right? Awesome, awesome. I think with this we'll wrap up, Bharat. We had a very nice conversation, and I think I learned a lot as well. Since we are doing something in SaaS, this is going to come handy, for us as well and a lot of other folks as well. Thank you again for this. Had fun. Let's catch up.
Absolutely. I had a blast. Thanks a lot,
Same,
Sukant.
same.
Take
Thank you
care.
so much. Thanks, Bharat. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye.